Most people think of supercars as the kings of speed. Sleek Ferraris, roaring Lamborghinis, or Porsches with wings. But here's the thing. Some of the most unassuming cars, the ones you'd spot in a grocery store parking lot or driven by your neighbor's kid, had the power to smoke those million-dollar machines. These sleeper cars didn't flaunt wild curves or flashy spoilers. Instead, they looked tame until you pressed the gas. Today, we're taking a joyride through 12 cars that secretly outpaced supercars, proving that looks can be deceiving when it comes to speed. Number 12. Buick GNX, 1987. In the 1980s, when Ferraris and Lamborghinis were all the rage, nobody expected a Buick of all things to come in and play spoiler. But that's exactly what the 1987 Buick GNX did. On the outside, it looked like a regular Regal, boxy, dark, and far from exotic. Yet under that unassuming body was a turbocharged 3.8-liter V6, cranking out a factory-rated 276 horsepower. In reality, the number was closer to 300+, thanks to conservative GM figures. The GNX could blast from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4.7 seconds. To put that into perspective, the Ferrari Testarossa of the same era took about 5.2 seconds. A Buick, yes, a Buick, was leaving Italian exotics in the dust at traffic lights. This car embarrassed plenty of supercar owners who thought they had the street locked down. It wasn't just speed. The GNX was engineered in collaboration with McLaren Performance Technologies, which fine-tuned the turbo system, transmission, and suspension. It was essentially GM's way of showing off what they could do if they wanted to make a performance monster. Limited to just 547 units, the GNX instantly became a legend, and today, it's one of the most collectible American cars from the 1980s. For middle-aged car enthusiasts back then, the GNX felt like a secret weapon. You didn't need a flashy European badge to have fun. You could roll up in what looked like a sensible Buick and still take down cars that cost 5 times more. That mix of subtle looks and jaw-dropping performance is exactly why the GNX has gone down in history as one of the ultimate sleeper cars. It proved that performance wasn't always about looks. Sometimes it was about being underestimated, until you put your foot down and left everyone else staring at your taillights. Number 11. Toyota Supra Mk4, 1993 to 2002. When people hear Toyota, most think of reliable Camrys and Corollas that will run forever. But in the 1990s, Toyota built something so outrageous it stunned the entire automotive world: the Supra Mk4. This wasn't just another sports car, it was a Japanese giant killer. The Supra packed a 3.0-liter twin-turbocharged inline-six, known as the legendary 2JZ GTE. From the factory, it was rated at 276 horsepower in Japan and 320 horsepower in the US. But here's the kicker: Toyota engineered the engine to handle way more. Tuners quickly discovered that with just a few upgrades, this car could push 600, 800, even 1,000 horsepower without breaking a sweat. That made it one of the most overbuilt engines of its era. Even stock, the Supra was no slouch. It could sprint 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds and had a top speed pushing past 155 miles per hour. That put it right up there with Ferraris and Porsches of the time, cars that cost significantly more. But the Supra had something else going for it: accessibility. A kid with some mechanical know-how and a few aftermarket parts could turn it into a monster that embarrassed Lamborghinis on the drag strip. Culturally, the Supra became iconic thanks to the Fast and the Furious movies. Paul Walker's bright orange Supra wasn't just Hollywood magic. It represented the real potential of this car. It became the ultimate tuner platform, a symbol of speed and rebellion for an entire generation. For Americans in their 40s and beyond, the Supra is a reminder of the golden era when Japanese automakers weren't just making safe, reliable sedans, but also building machines that could take on Europe's best. Even today, a clean MK4 Supra can fetch six figures at auction, and for good reason. It's a car that hid its supercar killing abilities under the Toyota badge. The Supra proved that speed wasn't reserved for the elite. It was for anyone willing to put in the time, effort, and love under the hood. Number 10. Dodge Charger Hellcat, 2015 to present. If there's one car that turned the modern muscle scene upside down, it's the Dodge Charger Hellcat. At first glance, it's a big four-door sedan, something you'd expect to see hauling kids to school or sitting in a rental car lot. But Dodge decided to stuff it with one of the wildest engines ever put in a production car. A 6.2-liter supercharged HEMI V8. This beast cranked out a jaw-dropping 707 horsepower when it first launched in 2015, instantly making headlines. Suddenly, a family sedan was faster than Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and McLarens of the same era. 0 to 60 miles per hour happened in just 3.6 seconds, and the quarter mile disappeared in the low 11s. That wasn't just quick for a sedan. It was brutally fast, the kind of speed that embarrassed European exotics, costing 3 to 4 times as much. What really made the Hellcat stand out was that Dodge didn't try to hide it. Unlike older sleeper cars that looked completely plain, the Charger Hellcat had attitude. It was loud, it was brash, and it wore its performance like a badge of honor. But here's the kicker: it was still practical. You could comfortably seat 5, load up the trunk, and drive it every day, while knowing you had supercar-level horsepower under your right foot. For American car fans, especially those over 40 who grew up in the golden age of muscle, the Hellcat felt like a dream come true. It was proof that Detroit still knew how to build insane, over-the-top performance machines. And while European supercars were becoming more about refinement and technology, the Hellcat stuck to raw power, tire smoke, and thunderous exhaust notes. Even today, the Charger Hellcat remains a legend. It showed that you didn't need a two-seater exotic to dominate the road. Sometimes, the scariest thing on the street is a full-size sedan with enough horsepower to make a Ferrari sweat. Number 9. Chevrolet Corvette ZR1, 2009 to 2013. For decades, the Corvette was seen as America's sports car. But in the late 2000s, Chevy decided to push things further. Enter the C6 Corvette ZR1, a car that didn't just compete with supercars, it embarrassed them. On the outside, it still looked like a Corvette, which meant sleek lines but nothing outrageous compared to the flashy Italian exotics. But under the hood sat a monster, a 6.2-liter supercharged LS9 V8, producing 638 horsepower. That was a number that sent shockwaves through the auto industry at the time. Suddenly, a Chevy was packing more muscle than Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and even some Paganis. Performance-wise, the ZR1 was a revelation. It sprinted from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.4 seconds and could blast past 200 miles per hour. To put it in perspective, that's Bugatti territory, but at a fraction of the price. The ZR1 was also a true track weapon with carbon ceramic brakes, magnetic ride control, and lightweight carbon fiber panels. It wasn't just about straight-line power. It could hang with the best around corners, too. For car enthusiasts over 40, the ZR1 was validation. Here was proof that American engineering could stand toe-to-toe with Europe's best. While Italians were charging $300,000 plus for their machines, Chevy was selling the ZR1 for around $100,000. That's still a lot of money, but in the world of supercars, it was a bargain for that level of performance. The ZR1 also carried a certain pride. It wasn't trying to be exotic. It was unapologetically American. It had the thunderous exhaust note, the brute force acceleration, and the kind of raw attitude that made it unforgettable. Even today, the C6 ZR1 is remembered as one of the most important Corvettes ever made. A car that showed the world you didn't need a prancing horse or raging bull badge to be a giant slayer. It wasn't just secretly faster than supercars, it was a supercar in disguise, wearing a Chevy badge. Number 8. Tesla Model S P100D, 2016 to 2019. When Tesla first entered the car scene, many folks thought of it as a quirky electric startup. Nobody expected it to redefine what fast meant. Then came the Model S P100D with ludicrous mode, and suddenly, a quiet, family-friendly electric sedan was leaving Ferraris and Lamborghinis in the dust. On paper, it sounded almost unbelievable. 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 2.5 seconds. That's hypercar territory, not what you'd expect from a four-door electric car that weighed over 2 tons and had space for 5 passengers and their luggage. Owners loved the fact that they could silently roll up next to a supercar, stomp the pedal, and watch the exotic disappear in the rearview mirror, all without burning a drop of gas. The secret was instant torque. Unlike traditional gas engines that build power gradually, the Tesla's dual electric motors delivered full thrust the second you touched the accelerator. That meant no lag, no waiting for revs to climb, just immediate face-melting acceleration. It wasn't just faster than many supercars in a sprint, it was shockingly effortless. For Americans over 40, the Model S was also proof of how quickly the automotive world was changing. Many grew up in an era where muscle cars and V8s ruled the streets, but here was an all-electric sedan rewriting the rulebook. It wasn't loud, it didn't smell like gasoline, and yet it could run circles around some of the most exotic machines ever built. What made it even more surprising was how practical it was. This wasn't a weekend toy. It was a daily driver with luxury features, cutting-edge tech, and long-range capability. The fact that you could take the kids to school and then demolish a Lamborghini in a drag race made it one of the ultimate sleepers of its time. The Tesla Model S P100D proved that the future of speed didn't need to roar. It could whisper and still blow your mind. Number 7. GMC Typhoon, 1991 to 1993. When you think of SUVs in the early 90s, speed probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind. Back then, most SUVs were slow, boxy family haulers. But GMC had other ideas. They took the humble Jimmy SUV, gave it a wild makeover, and created the Typhoon, a vehicle that could outrun Ferraris in a straight line. Under the hood sat a turbocharged 4.3-liter V6 producing 280 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers might not sound crazy today, but paired with all-wheel drive and a lightweight body, the Typhoon could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.3 seconds. At the time, that was quicker than a Ferrari 348 and on par with some Corvettes. Imagine rolling up in what looked like a modest SUV and blowing the doors off an Italian exotic. It was the ultimate sleeper flex. The Typhoon wasn't just fast in a straight line either. Thanks to its all-wheel drive system, it had impressive traction, making it a weapon off the line in any weather. Car and driver famously tested it against a Ferrari, and the Typhoon left the exotic shaking its head. Suddenly, soccer moms and weekend adventurers had access to supercar performance wrapped in an SUV package. What made the Typhoon so special was how unexpected it was. GMC wasn't known for performance vehicles. It was a truck brand. Yet here they were, building something that rewrote the rules. The Typhoon's interior was plush too, with leather seats and comfort features that made it feel like a luxury SUV years before that segment even exploded. For car fans over 40, the Typhoon represents a wild chapter in American automotive history. It was short-lived, built for only 2 years, but it left a massive impression. Collectors today hunt them down, knowing they were decades ahead of their time. The GMC Typhoon proved that even an SUV could play in the supercar league, and it did so with a turbo whistle that left rivals stunned. Number 6. Ford Taurus SHO, 1989 to 1999. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, the Ford Taurus was your typical family sedan. Safe, comfortable, and honestly, a little boring. But Ford decided to shake things up by creating a special version called the SHO, which stood for Super High Output. And boy, did it live up to the name. At first glance, the Taurus SHO didn't look much different from the regular Taurus sitting in your neighbor's driveway. That was the beauty of it. It blended in perfectly. But under the hood was a surprise. A 3.0-liter Yamaha-designed V6 that cranked out 220 horsepower, later upgraded to a 3.4-liter V8 in the 90s. These numbers might not blow you away today, but back then, they were enough to make a family sedan embarrass sports cars that were supposedly in a whole different class. The SHO could do 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 6.6 seconds, which was seriously impressive for a sedan at the time. To put it in perspective, it was nearly as quick as a Porsche 944 and faster than many European sedans costing 2 or 3 times more. And it wasn't just speed. The SHO handled surprisingly well, with tighter suspension and sharper steering that made it fun to toss around corners. For Americans over 40, the SHO represents one of the ultimate sleepers of the era. You could show up to the office or pick up your kids from school in what looked like a regular Taurus, then surprise unsuspecting drivers at a stoplight. It was subtle, practical, and wickedly fun. What really made the SHO special was its uniqueness. Ford didn't just slap a bigger engine into a sedan. They collaborated with Yamaha to build something sophisticated and ahead of its time. The car gained a cult following, and even today, enthusiasts still cherish it as one of Ford's most underrated performance machines. The Taurus SHO proved that performance didn't have to come wrapped in an exotic body. Sometimes, the fastest thing on the road looked just like the family car sitting in your garage. Number 5. Audi RS2 Avant, 1994 to 1995. Station wagons have always had a reputation for being practical family haulers, not performance machines. But in the mid-1990s, Audi, with a little help from Porsche, turned that image upside down with the RS2 Avant. This was the car that proved you could haul groceries and still outrun a Ferrari. On the outside, the RS2 looked like a normal Audi wagon with a slightly more aggressive stance, some subtle Porsche-inspired wheels, and discreet RS badging. Nothing screamed supercar slayer. But under the hood sat a 2.2-liter turbocharged inline-5 producing 311 horsepower. Combined with Audi's legendary Quattro all-wheel drive system, the RS2 could rocket from 0 to 30 miles per hour faster than a McLaren F1. Yes, you read that right. The world's fastest car at the time couldn't match this wagon's launch. From 0 to 60 miles per hour, the RS2 clocked around 4.8 seconds, putting it on par with contemporary Ferraris and Porsches. But unlike those exotics, the RS2 offered space for 5 people, luggage, and even the family dog. It was the ultimate definition of a sleeper: practical, understated, and capable of embarrassing cars that cost 3 or 4 times more. The Porsche influence went beyond the wheels. Porsche engineers helped fine-tune the suspension, turbo system, and even the brakes, making the RS2 feel more like a Porsche in wagon clothing. It wasn't just fast in a straight line. It was composed, agile, and genuinely fun to drive. For enthusiasts over 40, the RS2 is one of those cars that stands out as a legend of the 90s. It wasn't sold in the US, which only added to its mystique. Car magazines at the time raved about how it changed the perception of what a wagon could be. Today, it's remembered as the car that kick-started Audi's entire RS performance line. The RS2 Avant showed that true performance didn't have to be flashy. Sometimes, the most dangerous car at the stoplight was the one with roof rails and a child seat in the back. Number 4. Mercedes-Benz 500e, 1991 to 1994. In the early 90s, if you saw a Mercedes E-Class on the road, you probably thought of it as a comfortable executive sedan, a car for businessmen, not thrill seekers. But the 500e was different. It looked almost identical to the standard E-Class, but beneath its restrained exterior was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Built in collaboration with Porsche, the 500e was hand-assembled and took a full 18 days to build each unit. Under the hood sat a 5.0-liter V8 borrowed from the Mercedes SL, producing 322 horsepower. That was enough to launch this understated sedan from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.5 seconds, quicker than a Ferrari Mondial of the same era, and right on the heels of many true supercars. What made the 500e special was the way it combined brute force with luxury. You had leather seats, wood trim, and all the comforts of a high-end Mercedes. But the moment you put your foot down, it transformed into a performance machine that could shock anyone who underestimated it. The wide stance, slightly flared fenders, and subtle ride height changes were the only real giveaways that this wasn't your average E-Class. For drivers in their 40s and beyond, the 500e carries a special nostalgia. It represents a time when German automakers were quietly creating some of the most insane performance sedans on the market, long before AMG became a household name. In fact, the 500e is often referred to as the godfather of AMG sedans, setting the stage for today's fire-breathing Mercedes models. Culturally, the car developed a cult following because it was so understated. It wasn't about flashy styling or showing off. It was about knowing you had a Porsche-tuned monster under the hood while everyone else thought you were just driving an executive car. The Mercedes 500e proved that true performance didn't need to shout. Sometimes, the fastest car on the road was the quiet one blending into traffic, ready to unleash fury at the press of a pedal. Number 3. Pontiac GTO, 2004 to 2006. When Pontiac revived the GTO name in the mid-2000s, a lot of folks dismissed it at first. It didn't have the wild muscle car styling of the 1960s originals. Instead, it looked like a pretty ordinary coupe. But beneath that plain exterior was something very different. A serious performance machine with Corvette DNA. The modern GTO was essentially a rebadged Holden Monaro from Australia. But for the US market, Pontiac stuffed it with two different V8 options. The early models came with a 5.7-liter L S1 V8, producing 350 horsepower. Later versions got the mighty 6.0-liter LS2, pushing out 400 horsepower. Suddenly, this unassuming coupe could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 4.7 seconds and tear through the quarter mile in just over 13 seconds. That was faster than many European sports cars of the time. What made the GTO so underrated was its anonymity. Parked next to a Mustang or a Camaro, it didn't draw much attention. No stripes, no wings, no outrageous bodywork, just smooth, understated lines. But on the road, it was a totally different story. The GTO had raw V8 power, a comfortable interior, and enough refinement to make it both a daily driver and a weekend warrior. For car enthusiasts over 40, the GTO carries a mix of nostalgia and respect. On one hand, it revived one of the most iconic American muscle names. On the other, it became one of the best sleeper cars of its time, catching unsuspecting rivals off guard. The beauty of the GTO was that it delivered serious speed without shouting about it. You could pull up to a stoplight in what looked like a plain Pontiac and easily outrun cars wearing much more prestigious badges. Today, these cars are becoming collectible, especially the LS2-powered versions, because people recognize just how special they really were. The 2000s GTO was proof that you didn't need wild styling to deliver muscle. Sometimes, the plainest-looking cars packed the biggest punches. Number 2. Nissan GT-R, 2007 to present. When Nissan unveiled the R35 GT-R in 2007, the world didn't know what hit it. Here was a car from Japan wearing a Nissan badge that suddenly put Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and even Porsche on notice. And the best part? It did it while looking like a futuristic coupe you could actually daily drive. Under the hood was a 3.8-liter twin-turbocharged V6, hand-built by master technicians in Japan. It pumped out 480 horsepower at launch, with later models pushing well over 600 horsepower. But the magic of the GT-R wasn't just raw power. It was the way it delivered it. With its advanced all-wheel drive system and lightning-fast dual-clutch transmission, the GT-R could rip from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.2 seconds. That was faster than a Ferrari F430 or a Lamborghini Gallardo, both of which cost nearly double the price. Car enthusiasts nicknamed it Godzilla, and for good reason. On the track, it was a monster. Thanks to high-tech electronics, clever aerodynamics, and brutal acceleration, it became a giant killer, taking down European exotics, one by one. It wasn't just fast in a straight line either. It cornered with surgical precision, making it one of the most complete performance packages of its era. For drivers in their 40s, the GTR carries a special kind of respect. Many remember its predecessors, the Skyline GTRs of the 90s, which were forbidden fruit in the US. When the R35 finally arrived on American shores, it felt like payback, Japan delivering a car that could destroy the world's best without needing a flashy badge or million-dollar price tag. The GTR also blurred the lines between technology and tradition. It had the heart of a Japanese tuner car, but the brains of a supercomputer. It was proof that the future of performance wasn't just about big engines, but also about how intelligently that power was delivered. The Nissan GTR redefined what a supercar could be, and did it while hiding behind a Nissan badge. Number 1. Dodge Challenger SRT Demon, 2018. If there was ever a car that shocked the world by humiliating supercars, it's the Dodge Challenger SRT Demon. On the outside, it looked like a beefed-up Challenger, still carrying the retro-inspired muscle car vibe. But underneath, it was a drag strip weapon disguised as a street car. The Demon came with a supercharged 6.2-liter Hemi 5.8 that produced 808 horsepower on pump gas and an insane 840 horsepower when running high-octane race fuel. That made it the most powerful production V8 car ever built at the time. But Dodge didn't stop there. They engineered it to dominate one thing: the quarter mile. With specialized drag radials, launch control, and even a trans brake system normally reserved for professional drag racing, the Demon could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 2.3 seconds. The quarter mile? A certified 9.65 seconds at over 140 miles per hour. To put that into perspective, that made it quicker than a Bugatti Veyron, a Lamborghini Aventador, and nearly every hypercar on the planet at the time, all while costing a fraction of the price. What really stunned people was that the Demon wasn't some exotic limited-run car you could only see in magazines. This was a Dodge, a car brand your neighbor might drive every day. Yet, with the Demon, Dodge had essentially handed drag racers a factory-built monster that could roll off the lot and instantly set records. For enthusiasts over 40, the Demon represents something special. It was Detroit muscle turned up to 11, a reminder of the glory days when American cars were about raw power and outrageous performance. It proved that, even in the modern age of electrics and hybrids, old-school horsepower could still dominate. The Demon wasn't subtle. It shouted its intentions with wide fenders, a screaming supercharger, and enough tire smoke to cloud an entire neighborhood. But the fact that it carried a Dodge badge and still obliterated multi-million-dollar exotics makes it the ultimate example of a car secretly faster than a supercar. The Dodge Demon didn't just challenge supercars, it embarrassed them, cementing its place as one of the most outrageous performance cars of all time. In the end, speed doesn't always wear an exotic badge. From Buicks and Toyotas to Dodges and Teslas, these machines proved that power often hides in plain sight. Next time you see an ordinary car, don't blink. It just might be faster than a supercar.